All right, today I'm going to share with you about a new style of music I discovered called Q-pop. Q-pop is done by a musician named Lennon Tamayo that I will talk about. He's fusing together K-pop and the indigenous language of Quechua. Now, before I talk about Lennon and his new style of music, let's take a listen to some Q-pop.
Yo les vengo a contar de un sueño en mi caminar. Vivo sin miedo al andar, solo amor y libertad. Llevo un fuego en mi corazón, no es mala mi ambición. Vivo sin arrepentimiento, lo hago todo por diversión. No soy cámara, no soy acción, yo no busco tu atención. Solo el tiempo me dirá la verdad. Y mata, hawamuanki, Jason Huiki, hawanyos hanyaka shahtin. Y mata, hawamuanki, Jason Huiki, hawanyos hanyaka shah. Y mainata. Yo!
So this is Lennon Tamayo. He asks the question, what happens when you fuse Quechua, the most widely spoken indigenous language in the Americas, with the sounds of K-pop, a global music sensation out of South Korea? Well, this man is from Lima, Peru, and he is a TikTok sensation with his new style of music, Q-pop. He just recently released his first digital album. Tamayo grew up listening to his mother, who was a Peruvian folk artist who sang in Spanish and Quechua. Quechua is the indigenous language shared by 10 million speakers across Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile. As a teenager, K pop was Tamayo's passion. It helped him find a group of like minded friends, and together they fought bullying that he says they faced at school for looking indigenous. Now he's a musician, and he has fused these two cultures in his life together. He mixes Spanish and Quechua lyrics with K pop beats to create Q pop. The Q is what stands for Quechua. He has released 5 songs online and racked up over 4 million likes on his TikTok account. Now, Tamayo has a message of love and freedom. He says, quote, "My music helps embrace the roots, but without being oblivious to modernity and globalization." End quote. For Tamayo, the K-pop aesthetic helped influence a personal style where he mixes his own choreography and his own way of acting. And it's reinforcing his key message of love and freedom. Here's what he says, quote, "Love to unite people and the freedom to be yourself. Because it's all about embracing existence and seeking a full, real life with depth." End quote. After he completed studies in psychology at the National University of San Marcos, Tamayo says he could not picture himself being a psychologist. He wanted to be a singer, and he wanted to make music his passion. He says, quote, "Why can't I transfer K-pop experience to Andean music?" End quote. Andean refers to the Andes Mountains, where this indigenous language comes from. Tamayo was practicing dance steps at home in his Lima suburb when he asked himself this question. In many parts of South America, the only artists who are performing in Quechua are those who live in the Andes Mountains. Tamayo is the only child of Yolanda Panaris, a talented contemporary Andean music singer. She taught him the importance of showing his Quechua identity in a country where racism is covered up. When he was a child, he says he was bullied at school for being shy and for his complexion and the shape of his eyes and his straight black hair and his sharp cheekbones. He sees these traits as something that the Andean youth and South Korean singers have in common, and something that has helped K pop become so popular, even in remote villages on the outskirts of Lima, Peru. That's where millions of these indigenous speakers live. Here's a quote from Tamayo, quote, Art is a vehicle to move consciences and generate change. End quote. Tamayo recently released his first digital album, Amaru. Amaru means snake in Quechua. It's a word that is tied to history, lyrics, music, and myths of the Inca people. The Incas were a great civilization in the Andes Mountains that were conquered by the Spanish 500 years ago. The Incas spoke Quechua. In a preview video for Amaru, the police are seen harming protesters carrying a Peruvian flag. There's an indigenous woman in traditional Quechua clothing that is played by Tamayo's mom, Panaris. She escapes into the forest. The scene brings to mind these protests that were happening in Peru last year and this year. Protests where the Peruvians were demanding the resignation of the current president. In these protests, some indigenous people died. Like tens of thousands of Peruvians, Tamayo participated in these protests at the beginning of the year. Here's what he said about it. Quote, "It's very important to make this type of music because it allows you to generate change and generate hope in young people.